Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we are looking at Aldo Nova. We're looking at his whole career, and I'm joined by John Snow from TooLoudTooOldMusic.com and Tim Durling from Tim's Vinyl Confessions. So if you like Aldo Nova, you like fantasy, let's get started right after this.
The deal is I didn't want to make records for CBS because I felt that I was always neglected there. They'd make me make a record and then throw it against the wall. If it worked, it worked. It was, there really wasn't a commitment like there is now. We started after the second record, and then after the third record, I made a conscious decision to just lie low and just go, I'm going to go back home to Montreal. And what I did then is I produced Celine Dion.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome John Snow and Tim Durling here tonight for yet another in our Canadian series. I've not announced that we're doing a Canadian series, but I seem to hit a lot of Canadian artists on this channel, and there's nothing wrong with that. But tonight we're looking at Aldo Nova. And Aldo Nova is one of those artists that I heard back in 1982. You couldn't escape Aldo Nova at the pool because Fantasy was one of those tracks that they would just play constantly. And in fact, it's still burned in my memory, gentlemen, the sound from that little tiny speaker, that the tinny sound of Fantasy coming through and playing throughout the pool. It was one of those songs in 1982 you couldn't escape. They also, I was doing some research. Evidently, this is like his only hit that he even had. VH1 called him a one-hit wonder. And if you listen to that first album, there's plenty of hits on there. And I just don't know really the story behind it or what happened, but I think Aldo Nova should have been a lot bigger than he was. And that's precisely why we're doing this on this channel, because we think that Aldo Nova deserves more attention. Like I said, I've said this before, I try to throw out these artists that really should be back in the spotlight. So tonight we're looking at Aldo Nova. And we're going to start out with that first album that came out on Portrait in 1982. I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Snow, who I want to welcome 100%. John's not been on the show before. And hey, John, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Well,
I've watched a bunch of the episodes, and so now it's like glad to be here. And Tim,
yeah, glad to have you.
Known Tim for a little while. So,
well, we love Tim. We love Tim. Yes, Aldo, there it is, kids. Oh, brilliant.
Does everybody's open from the top like this does?
You know what?
Mine does.
I was trying to find mine, and it does open from the top. So I just brought my
copy
CD.
I've ever seen. I don't know what you would think because of where the spine is. You'd think that it would, that his name would be here, but no. Every copy I've ever heard of opens from the top. Weird. I don't know why.
And I'm assuming, Tim, yours is a Canadian pressing?
Yes.
And John, I'm not sure. Are you in the States? Or are you in Canada? Where are you?
I'm in North Carolina. In the States.
Well, then there you go.
Yeah.
Well, yours is probably a domestic copy then, right?
I'm sure it is. I've had it for quite a while. And then I do have the CD. This is the Legacy.
Oh.
I believe reissue with the extra song.
This is just the regular old first Portrait. And it sounds wonderful.
Get this on the back of it, Grant, if it's
But this CD sounds great. This CD sounds great.
But yeah, Fantasy was the first song. Here's the single.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I'd never seen this. Oh, look at that. I've never seen the picture sleeve. I never had the single back in the day.
Yeah, I started collecting them within the last couple years. I think I'm up to about 100 picture sleeves, and most of them are 80s bands.
So we got to do a picture sleeve episode, John, because I've done 2 of them now, and I just pick them up when I see them. I actually don't have any Aldo Nova ones, so that's very cool.
I just picked up 8 this week, 8 more this week.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, Aldo Nova. MTV played the crap out of that song, Fantasy. And I remember sitting in my basement when that came on and you hear the thumping of the helicopter and then it finally lands. I'm like, what the heck is this? And then that outfit he was wearing with the leopard print. Now that takes some confidence right there to wear that thing.
Hey, John, it was the 80s. You could get away with that.
You
So,
could, but still, I don't know. I could never do that. And so that's kind of where I got introduced to it. It was that song because it was just played everywhere. And I don't, my friends weren't into music like I was. So that was probably one of the very first albums I ever bought on cassette at the time. I don't have the cassette anymore. And then I've had CDs, I've had vinyl. If I could just find the 8-track, I'd be happy.
Tim Durling, there you go. God, I knew he would have that.
Very nice.
Very nice.
But yeah, I mean, it's just great 80s rock synths, a lot of synths. The guitar playing was incredible. He can do both really, really well. And yeah, why there weren't more hits. Fantasy was his only top 40 hit ever. Even Blood on the Bricks, when it came out, they didn't have top 40 hits on that one. But yeah, I mean, I just fell in love with like Ball and Chain, It's Too Late, Can't Stop Loving You. There was just so many. The ballads were great. The rockers, couldn't beat it. For me, it was one of my favorite artists at the time.
Well, I totally get it because me and my buddies, we played the heck out of this record. 1982, I mean, that had to be one of the biggest things. I don't know. I thought it was absolutely a classic, and I still think it's a classic in my book. Yeah. So I'm just curious, John, I know you're a big fan, but if you were going to rate this record out of 10, what would you rate it?
Oh, yeah, I've got a couple more I like better. It'd be a 7.5 to an 8.
Wow.
Yeah, because I really do like it,
Mm-hmm.
but some of it's dated, very dated in the sound, and so
Well, to some degree, I think it sounds very 70s, but not like what's coming up.
Well, yeah,
but we haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it still stands up. I just feel sad that no one really even acknowledges it anymore. Cause I think there were a lot of artists to me when I listened to it, like the track Heart to Heart. To me, it just seems like the Scorpions really had to listen to that a lot because it seems like there's a lot of bands that might have heard this record in 82 and copped a lot from it. Maybe that's just me, but I just hear a lot of other things in it that came later.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a big record then,
I can see that.
Yeah.
So,
well, Tim Durling, John, unless you have anything more to add on this record.
No.
Let's pop it over to Tim. Tim, what's your thoughts on this one?
So I knew about Aldo from. This is going to sound really, really strange. I'll get to that when we get to the right album. Okay. But I got into Aldo in 91. Okay. I saw the video for what was then a brand new song, Blood on the Bricks. And I knew that he'd been working with John Bon Jovi. I knew that he hadn't done an album in quite a long time. And so this video came on. I didn't know who it was at first. I was like, who's this band? This is a great song. Who is this? And the label came on at the end. And so the next time I got to a store, which was actually in the States, you know how they had like the $4.99 cassette bin? Mm-hmm. I thought, well, I'll take a chance. So I bought this. Bought this cassette.
Yeah. That looked like mine, I think.
I think I had one of those too. I think a lot of kids did.
This one's a slightly newer issue because it's the clear cassette. Originally, it would have been like the cream colored one. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this is a double platinum album in the States. Yeah. I mean, at least once people appreciated what he did. And surprisingly, like most people from the 80s know Fantasy. It only hit number 23, which is surprising. Probably one of my favorite songs of all time. There are some rock songs that I think are just perfect songs. They're just perfect compositions. And this is one of them. I'm going to give this album a 10. I can't shoot holes in it. I think it's a perfect album. Mm-hmm. I know what John means. Some of the production is a little bit dated, but I just think the songcraft is just so there. He could do rockers. He could do ballads. Yeah, Heart to Heart's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. I love the drums in that song. And he pretty much, except for the drums and maybe some of the bass, he did it all himself. He multi-tracked. He was a one-man band, sang and harmonized with himself, and rhythm guitar, lead guitar, bass guitar, keyboards, piano, and he produced it. Like this first album of his is essentially demos that somehow found their way into the hands of a guy by the name of Tony Bon Jovi, who ran the Power Station studio, and he had a distant cousin or a nephew or someone that was working there named John. And I think that Aldo Nova's first couple of albums were an enormous influence on the early Bon Jovi stuff. Enormous. I think he was ahead of his time. I think he predated what would be called hair metal or pop metal. The idea of having like aggressive sounding backing tracks with like poppy vocals and melodies over top of it. He really spearheaded it in the 80s because and he started out doing it. You know what I mean? Like you had bands like Journey that ended up doing that, but they didn't start out sounding like that, nor did REO Speedwagon or any of those bands.
Scorpions.
He just knew.
That's what I'm saying. I hear a lot of Scorpions in this.
He had a vision and he went for it. So no, I love that first album. I think it's every bit deserving of its classic status. I just think his other albums are deserving of it too.
Yeah.
But I'll get into how I first heard of Aldo Nova very shortly.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say this record when it came out though kind of got like mixed reviews. Rolling Stone did not care for it. They thought he had a reedy, whiny voice, and I think his voice is part of his appeal. For one, you listen to some of the later stuff, he doesn't quite have that same tonality, and I don't know if it's because you just get older or maybe he changed his vocal styles. But on these, at least on these, I'm going to say the first three, he really has a certain character. I always thought he sounded great,
Yeah.
And they also complain that a lot of his stuff just kind of like is rehashed and it's like cliched. But for me, when I was in 1982, I didn't hear that at all. And I really don't hear it now. I just hear great, I'm going to say pop metal, I guess. It's kind of in between. I'm not even really sure what to classify it as, because there's part of it that I hear that is power, like It's Too Late. I would almost consider power pop. Now that might make the power pop community cringe because I said that with Aldo Nova, but I think there's a lot of power. Yeah. We listen to it. There's a lot of power pop or pop metal on it. And I think it did pave the way for a lot of what was going to come. I personally will give this record 8 stars for considering where it look, I'm just saying Ball and Chain. You can see why he worked with Celine Dion. Hell, if you put Celine Dion's voice on here, be a great Celine Dion track. No, I'm being serious.
No, I mean, the ballads
he's a great writer. The ballads here are catchy. These ballads should have been released as singles. I mean, what was the Fooling Yourself? I think Fooling Yourself was, but I don't. John, maybe you know. What were all the
Fooling Yourself was?
Yeah, Fooling Yourself was a follow-up single to Fantasy. It only hit number 65. But another thing, something else I'd like to say about that, there's no video for it. You gotta.
That's a killer.
Like, Sometimes record companies didn't know, they weren't thinking that smart as like two pro. There was a video for Ball and Chain. It's not much of a video. It's like the Fantasy video, but it's black and white. I
remember seeing that.
But it's a great song. It's a great ballad. Should have been a hit. Fooling Yourself should have been a hit. It's Too Late could have been a single. He could have had another Can't Stop Loving You could have been a single. Even something like See the Light, which is kind of, I don't want to say jazzy, but it's got kind of like it's a little bit different. It could have gotten airplay on stations that didn't normally play heavier rock music. Like, they could have gone deep with singles on this one. And I don't know why it didn't, he couldn't sustain that. And also, whatever Rolling Stone was raving about 1982, I'm sure none of those albums are in my collection.
Yeah. Well, they changed their tune because if you look at later reviews, they gave it 4 out of 5. So, they've changed. This album over time is, I don't know. Rolling Stone, I'm just throwing it out there. You make your own assumptions, but it is what it is. So anyway, let's look at the next album. Next album is Subject, Aldo Nova, which is the second album. And it came out in 1983, or certified gold. in December of 1994. The record company, from what I read, really wanted a carbon copy of that first album. But, you know, Aldo Nova being who he is, he's not going to duplicate what he just did. So he almost, I'm assuming, gentlemen, is this really considered a concept album? What would you consider this?
I would, it's a loose concept.
Loose concept
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Originally, my understanding, well, it's in the liner notes of one of the compilations. He wanted to do a concept album about sort of a post-apocalyptic Earth, and the record company said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa,
whoa,
But yeah,
Aldo.
it's got intros, it's got
Whoa.
sweets, you know, it's but mixed in are love songs and the type of songs that would have been on the first album. So he ended up with something in the middle. Yeah, the fact that it took 12 years to go gold, I think it's, well, we'll get into what I think about it.
Well, Aldo also claimed the Portrait didn't promote it either. And I kind of remember back in the day, of course, you know, the first album was huge, but that second album just kind of, you know, I don't remember much promotion for it.
It was on MTV. Monkey on Your Back was probably the only one I really remember seeing. And when I saw the video, I knew, oh, he's got a new album out. So of course I went and bought it at that time. But outside of that, I don't really remember seeing any other videos or much promotion on it at all.
There's one other video that I didn't see till much later on YouTube. There is a video for Hold Back the Night,
which is one of my favorites of his.
Oh,
so,
here we
but...
go. Well, John, why don't you?
Fans, I think Bruce Kulick is in the video. I don't think he played on it, but I think he's in the video.
Oh, I'll now need to go find the video. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, John, let's throw it over to you. What's your whole thoughts on this second album?
I will make it easy. It's brilliant. I mean, it is one of those albums that has to be listened to from beginning to end in the order it was given, because of the interludes and the openings. There's, like I said, suites and preludes, and it just every song, you know, they all sound different, but they all sound the same, if you kind of know what I mean. The album has that same tone, that same sound, sonic on it. And it feels like you're going on an adventure throughout the whole thing. And this for me is my favorite Aldo Nova album, hands down, not even close. So I can't really say enough good things about it, but Hold Back the Night, it's just, to me, one of the best ballads. I guess you'd call it a ballad. It's a little upbeat at times, but and then Victim of a Broken Heart, Always Be Mine. The ballads on this thing are just killer. And then Hey Operator, which I do now know that is a cover, but back then,
Carl Dixon,
I had no idea that was a cover for Coney Hatch cover. But yeah, I just think it's a fantastic sounding album. The songs rock, the ballads are perfect, and then the interludes, the instrumental, they're so interesting. They've got a great sound, and it's not showboaty, but it's like you see how talented he really is, I think, on this one.
Well, you've got the way it starts out, subject's theme, Armageddon, you know, and it goes right in. I mean, that's pretty bold for, you know, 1983, considered what came before, but we are used to him having interludes, you know, from fantasy, but this was, you know, we're talking almost like 4 minutes of interlude, which is kind of bold. And then it goes into that 1-2 punch of Monkey on Your Back, which is absolutely killer. Probably one of my favorite songs of his. I mean, the riffs, the guitar. The other thing I should have mentioned before on the first album and on this or any of these records is his guitar work. Holy crap. He is like one of the guitar players. You can hear his tone, and I know, in my mind, I know who it is. I can tell it's Aldo Nova, and he's just one of those guys that no one ever talks about. But what a brilliant player, you know? But I wanted to throw that out before I forgot. But yeah, I think this is a great record. John, did they release was anything released as a single off of this?
Monkey on Your Back was.
Okay.
And then Always Be Mine were both technically singles. I've never seen one.
I've never seen one either.
But I would, if I ever find one, I'll definitely grab them. But yeah, I just, like I said, I just don't remember much promoting on it at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
Uh,
this. Well, when I
Always
first
Be
heard it,
Mine should have had a video. That should have been a hit.
yeah. Well,
Why didn't they? I like there's record companies have to take some of the, like, Hold Back the Night's a great song,
mm,
but it's sort of a heavier, for him. I understand Monkey on Your Back, you want to punch people like you did with Fantasy.
yeah.
But then you want, like, Always Be Mine is, to me, I could hear that in a block of 80s songs, like just being one of those almost overplayed 80s songs. It's so good. But it should have had a video in 1983.
I don't know. Maybe I just can't figure out why he didn't get the promotional backing that he should have. I just don't know.
Well, I mean, it is Portrait. They weren't really
Well,
big
that's
major
true.
label here in the States.
They were spending all their money on Cyndi Lauper, I bet you.
And Heart.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
Heart.
Heart was
Not by this time. Not by this time.
Maybe Accept. That's a weird bunch of names we just threw out, but they were all on Portrait.
But yeah.
Well, it would make sense that maybe Cyndi Lauper.
Oh yeah,
They had their money on Cyndi.
Her first album came out, so I imagine that was commanding. But it's CBS. I mean, it's not just Portrait. It's CBS corporate. It's a huge Sony worldwide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, John, this is your favorite record. Needless to say, I'm sure you're probably going to give it a 10 out of 10.
Can I do 11? No,
you can do 11. I don't care.
No, 10 is fine. 10 is what I would put it. Just, I mean, I liked him before, but that solidified it.
Mm-hmm.
I became a lifelong fan because of Subject, because it told me he's more than just fantasy and can do that.
Well, John, I just want to ask you this since I have you on the show. What was your gateway drug into Aldo Nova? What was the first record that brought you in or had you hooked in?
For him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was Fantasy.
Okay.
Seeing that on MTV, because, 82, 83, we got MTV in our house pretty quick. And that, get off of school, I go downstairs in the basement, MTV was on.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the start of my love for music, was really that time frame, which is why I love 80s music so much. Yeah.
Well, we got a 10 out of 10, folks. So that's pretty damn good. Tim Durling, what's your thoughts on this, on Subject, Aldo Nova?
So, the CD here, I think this is just the standard.
Yeah, this is the
the Rock Candy.
Rock Candy one.
Yeah. So I want to get the Rock Candy ones.
The liner notes, I must say, and all the booklets, the Rock Candy stuff just kicks.
They do a great job.
I'm not sure, it's got nice photos and a lot of information, but I think you're probably better off keeping, you have the original Portrait CD, right, Tim?
Yeah.
I think for sound quality, you're probably better off with that, because a lot of these Rock Candy ones are pretty jacked up. I don't think this one's too bad, but this was mastered by John Astley, and I'm not a big John Astley fan, but you have to admit the packaging on these CDs are great. And
they do a good job, and they also make CDs available again that had been out of print for years, right? I got into them at just a point where the CDs were still kind of available, but after that, So this is actually the first song I ever heard from Aldo was "Monkey on Your Back," and I'll tell you where I heard it. This is going back, and I hope you guys or someone out there remembers this. I looked it up on Google just to make sure that I didn't just imagine it. So of course, up in here in Canada, we had Much Music. Much Music went on the air in 1984. I didn't get it where I lived until early 1986. So my only chance to watch music videos were there was weekly shows. There was half-hour daily shows during the week, but it was like a rare thing. And it almost didn't matter what videos they were. It's I got to see some videos once I knew they were out there, right? So believe it or not, there used to be a show on PBS called Color Sounds. And it was I don't know if it was an hour or half-hour show, but they played music videos. This would have been circa 83 through 85 or so, give or take. And they would always have the lyrics underneath. And I discovered this of just changing the channels. It was like, I don't know, 5:30 on a Saturday afternoon. And I saw a video. And there was the words were playing underneath it. And some of the videos that I remember were like Night Ranger, You Could Still Rock in America, Joe Jackson Stepping Out, Cool in the Gang, Joanna, like, so around that time period, and Monkey on Your Back. So I remember seeing that video, hearing that song way back then. Now, this is before I started buying albums. So that's definitely the first thing I ever heard from Aldo. Was on this weird Color Sound show. I don't know if anyone remembers that out there. It's way back there at the memory banks. But for some reason, not just the song, but the video is in the memory banks. That, it starts out in the lab, and then him and his band, they're playing on this whatever stage, and then there's like a little narrative of In the Streets going along with the song lyrics. Great tune. One of the first anti-drug songs to ever come out.
Yeah.
And I think it hit on the mainstream rock charts, but pretty heavy. It was heavier than Fantasy. It was a little less accessible, and you're right, his guitar playing is just,
oh my God,
spot on. But I mean, that intro then, like the Armageddon stuff, that is so cool. Yeah, but it is a pretty gutsy move. I'm just looking at the CD. The first actual song on the CD is track 4. So that's, that takes a little bit of chutzpah or whatever the word is. And people that have seen my show, they know I'm a huge Coney Hatch fan. But I discovered that backwards because I didn't know Hey Operator wasn't him. The first, the first thing I had was a cassette, and there's no credits. So I didn't realize till later that it was a Coney Hatch song. Now, I got to be honest, I like the Coney Hatch version better, but I like Aldo's version, and it made Carl Dixon some money. But there are so many potential hit singles on this album. I mean, Cry Baby Cry, Victim of a Broken Heart, Always Be Mine, All Night Long. Like, there's just so many potential hits on this album. Now, some might consider the production dated. It's electronic drums. It's not drum machines. It's electronic drums being played.
Like Simmons or something.
The hexagonal Simmons drums. But I don't have a problem with that. I couldn't imagine hearing this album any other way. I'm so used to it. I want to show a real funny thing, though. And this is a Canadian thing about how Canadian content, CanCon and all that. We had the system, the MAPL system, which is MAPL, music, artist, producer, lyrics. If you've got half of those, then your song qualifies as Canadian content. Now, Aldo always self-produced. So on this cassette, it's got M, A, and L filled out, qualifying for Canadian content, but not the P. And yet he produced it. Well, that's because he produced it in New York.
Oh.
He produced it in. I think
Toronto had been different.
I think it probably would have been Montreal for him, but I think he produced at a place called the Boogie Hotel or the Boogie Botel, which is you'll see that on some other albums, including, if anybody's a fan of Aldo Nova, like, I'm not overly familiar with Blue Oyster Cult, other than the obvious songs, but the first song on their album, The Revolution by Night, which came out the same year, 1983, Take Me Away, is a killer song, co-written by Eric Bloom and, yes, Aldo Nova, and you can hear it, and I think you can hear him playing on it. It's a great song. Yeah, he's like an unsung hero. If you look at what he's done, like, outside of his own music, he's like, he's not a like prolific session guy like somebody like a Steve Lukather, but he's played with a lot of different artists. And, Grant mentioned the Celine Dion thing. He's responsible or to blame, whatever you want to call it, for her transitioning from singing just in French to singing in English. Yeah. He had a lot to do with that, right? Yeah. So, and he's written songs that she's recorded. So he's done quite well for himself, I'm sure.
I think he's got a Grammy because of her as well.
I believe he did.
Yeah. And he's one of those artists like Coney Hatch, like Vandenberg. I just wish there was more music to talk about. The last thing I'll say about Subject is that, like the first album, I give it a 10. I can't fault it for anything. I love it. It's also available on 8-track. It is very rare, and I don't have it. It's the only other of his albums that are on 8-track. It's very, very rare. So that's something else for John to look for out there.
There you go, John. You need that Need that for your collection.
Yeah, there's nothing on eBay right now. There's nothing on Discogs right now. My local store didn't have it this weekend, so I'm.
Has anybody ever went on Discogs to see how much it's went for in the past?
It's not even listed.
Never
There's not
sold
even an entry
one.
for it. No, there's not even an entry for it. No, I've seen it.
Wow.
I've seen it on Facebook groups. I know it exists. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it in my book. But no one's added it to Discogs yet. Now, that drives me nuts
Wow,
when I know
that's rare.
something exists and no one's added it. So somebody's got to add it.
Tim, you might want to add it.
I don't have it. I don't have pictures of it to access.
Yeah,
I don't know the
yeah.
track listing.
Someone will get to
Oh,
it
I would
eventually.
love to see the track listing on that one
Yeah,
to see if it changes up at all.
I'm sure. Well, hold on.
I bet
Let me
it
look at-
does.
Let me look at the first one and see what they did.
Because that intrigues me all the time when they do.
Oh
that.
yeah, they mixed this up a little bit. It's not bad. I've seen worse. But so program 1 is Fantasy, Hot Love.
Mhm.
Program 2 is It's Too Late, Ball and Chain, and Heart to Heart. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Here's where it starts to get screwy. Program 3 is Fooling Yourself, See the Light. And then
Oh,
program 4 is a misprint, I'm just noticing. Under the Sun,
Whoa.
instead of Under the Gun, You're My Love and Can't Stop Loving You.
Okay.
So that's how this, anyway, there you go.
That's wild.
Yeah.
that is wild. So I'm assuming you're giving this a 10 out of 10 too, or
Yes.
okay.
I love it.
Well, I love it too. I don't know if I love it as much. Well, I have to admit, when I went out to Reno, I played this on the airplane ride, trying to get used to it because I really hadn't heard it in years. And it was just amazing how fresh sounding I thought it was, and how, I don't know if I want to use experimental, but he certainly was stretching out on this record.
Yeah.
He's like one of those artists, at least at this point, from what I gather, he's just doing what he wants. He just does what he does, Like you said, he did practically everything on that first album. So, but yeah, I think side one's I think, to be quite honest, I like this album better than the first album. I would give this a 9 because I even listened to it again today and I just went, holy crap, there's not anything that's weak on here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give it a 9 because I like the fact that he's pushing himself and he's just not following what he did before.
Right.
You mean like the record company wanted him to just do what he did before, and he's like, I'm not doing that. But I don't know. I'll give it a 9. But the problem is that after this record, he wanted to go back into production, and he kind of lost interest in the whole being a rock and roll star to some degree. Though I don't know if he ever was out to be a rock and roll star. I don't know. I don't think so. I think he was just doing his thing and he got a record deal.
I don't know how much he toured. Maybe somebody out there can tell me.
He did 3 tours, I think.
Yeah.
One for each of the first 3. No, not for all 3. Sorry. He did it. I have it on a list somewhere. Hold on. Why I have it on a list, don't ask. He did Fantasy, Subject, and Blood on the Bricks, and those are the only times he toured.
Okay. Because by 1985 in Twitch, he just kind of was going through the motions on that. He admitted it. He admitted
and I
it.
think to me, it's like, I think he's just doing what the record company told him to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of record company pressure on this album for sure.
Yeah.
And it was a long
$4,
time
by the
coming.
way.
I mean,
$4
two
for
years
this
between
$4.
2 years.
$4.
Oh yeah.
Like I paid more for the CD.
It's cheap if you can find it.
I mean, if this guy isn't ready for Miami Vice, I don't know who is.
Yeah, that
Look at that.
cover
The hair, the outfit.
screams 1985.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
you
the
got to
whole
remember
vibe,
too.
the way the Aldo Nova is, it's all Vice.
Yeah. 2 years in between albums was a long time at this point in time, right?
Yeah. But the booklet and the info, and like he said in here, he said, by this time, I'd really lost interest and I just wanted to go back into producing acts and do that. And this was just basically something to throw at the record company, and he was done with his contract. But if you listen to this record, at least for me, it doesn't sound much different than anything else that's coming out at that time. I mean, it fits right in. To me, I hear hits on here as well. Is it the Aldo Nova that I knew and loved? No, it's a little too slick for me. But I think I'd rather throw it over to Jon Snow, who is the in-house Aldo Nova enthusiast.
Enthusiast. That's probably a good word because it's
There you
definitely
go.
not an. I agree with everything you just said. It's generic in the fact that it's like everything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't excite me as much. However, there are some great tracks on it.
There are.
And that keeps you coming back when you can always pull up. I mean, it does start off great with Tonight. Rumors of You. I mean, again, it's what you would expect from him. Surrender Your Heart, another thing. You know, after reading it, going through the lyrics or the titles here, I'm like, yeah, that's a good song. That's a good song. I love the last song, Twitch, which is an instrumental.
Yes.
We were talking
I do
about
like
that,
that.
the other day. Yeah, I'm trying to think what my favorite one on here. I think I like Lay Your Love on Me. I like how that song, it kind of gets a little heavy. It's got some the chorus. I really like the chorus on that way, and the way he
You
does
can
it.
really hear Michael Bolton on the chorus, can't you?
That's what it
You
is.
can.
Yes, Bolton's on this album.
Yes. But that's back when he was still making rock albums, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
what was that?
when he was on there.
What was, I know I'm jumping the gun, but a friend of mine has an album from Michael Bolton when he was like in a band, maybe?
Blackjack.
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 He was in Blackjack with Bruce Kulick. They did 2 albums in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then his first 2 solo albums on CBS were kind of in the same vein as this album. Like, he was trying to make it as a rock and roller. He's got a really good song called Everybody's Crazy, which I would highly recommend people listen to, and they would be like, you can tell who it is. Be like, I didn't know he had songs like this.
Have you either one of you heard the Blackjack album?
No.
I didn't care for them much.
I didn't care for it either.
I found there was a cassette that Polygram had put out in 1990 that had, like, it had both albums on one cassette, like one on each side. I thought it might have been good, but
I gave it a shot.
I didn't really like any of the songs. It's definitely more rock than you'd expect from Michael Bolton, but sometimes there's a reason why these things are obscure, because sometimes they're just not that good. The songs just aren't there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's kind of, you know, I like it, but I don't at the same time. So for me, it's
I understand
like
what you're saying.
I was gonna say it's either a 6 or a 7, so we'll kind of go a 6.5, which might be really low, but it's not one I pick up as much as I do. There's 3 of them I pick up a lot, and there's a new one I pick up a lot. But this is not one that I go to that often. But still, again, there are some really good songs on here that are worth hearing.
There's a lot of great players on here. Kenny Aronoff's playing drums. Randy Jackson's playing bass. Got
Not
John Bott. Am I looking at the wrong one? Oh, I'm on Blood and the Bricks. Shit. Ooh. That was a mistake. I guess I don't have that up. But
there's still Anton Fig plays.
Yeah, I'll have to edit that out. That was a mistake, huh?
Yeah.
Anton Fig's on this.
Carmassi.
One song.
Yeah, just for one song. But Billy Carmassi does the rest of the drums.
Yeah.
And Billy Carmassi was with him for a long time.
Actually, I think all except 2 songs on here are Lindrum.
Well, it was the era.
Oh.
So Anton Fig plays on Heartless, and Alan Schwartzberg plays on Fallen Angel. But the rest of it, he even thanks Roger Lynn, saying, without your Lindrum, this album wouldn't exist. But if you listen to it,
well, the Lindrum has a certain tonality, and you can't mistake it.
And it's the same
all
fill
that
over
Prince
and over
stuff.
again.
Prince was the master of the Lindrum. Prince is all that 1999,
Prince,
and
he bent the Lindrum to his devices.
But he was the master of it.
Yeah,
no doubt. But they do have a certain tonality that you can tell.
The production on this album is extremely dated. It's extremely, everything about this album screams 1985. The cover art, the logo, the back cover, everything. But you could call it a guilty pleasure, I guess.
Yeah.
I've always had a soft spot for this. Again, first thing is he doesn't have a lot of music. But I remember distinctly after Blood on the Bricks came out, me and my buddy John, who was like my main partner in crime for music, we both got the first album. We both got Blood on the Bricks. We went into our local record store at the time, and we were asking the guy behind the counter if he could order what else there was from Aldo Nova. Because remember, this wasn't the days of the internet. And he said, well, actually, he had a little section in the middle of his store which had like markdown cassettes in it. Said, actually, I think I've got one of his there. And John got to it before I did, but I eventually got the same one. And for like $3, John got this, which had probably been sitting there for 6 years. So, but now let me tell you what I do like about this album. I think the first song, Tonight Lift Me Up, is great. You know, I would like to hear it with real drums. Rumors of You was the single. There's a video for it. Fiona, the singer, who had albums out on Atlantic Records at the same time, she sings on Rumors of You, like back and forth vocal. It's a cool song. It's very poppy, very keyboardy, very much something that you would hear on the radio in 1985. It's like not unlike something like what Don Henley was doing at the time. You know what I mean? Like with you know, All She Wants to Do Is Dance and Boys of Summer, especially that song Sunset Grill with the, I think it's got Lindrum on it. He was trying.
Yeah, it's Lindrum.
He wasn't going for hard rock so much, even though I think Heartless is a pretty cool song, even though he didn't write that one. That was another thing he didn't like. He didn't like songs getting handed to him.
Yeah, there's a lot on here too.
Fallen Angel, I think, and I don't know if John would agree with me or not, but I think Fallen Angel with different production could have been on his first album. I think that's a pretty cool song. I think that Stay could have been a radio hit. I think If Looks Could Kill is pretty catchy. I mean, it's got a pretty undeniable chorus. Yeah, Lay Your Love on Me is pretty much the heaviest, if you could call anything heavy on here.
Right.
I think maybe he was, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think he was trying to write a Heavens on Fire type of song. You listen to the verses, like it's kind of got that thing going on. Long Hot Summer really sounds like Don Henley. That sounds like Dirty Laundry almost. Like with that sort of rhythm to it. But I listen to it and I want to chew the album out, but I get all these songs in my head. So where does that leave me? I don't, you know, I feel I stand by giving those first two albums 10s. I don't think it's just nostalgia. I think I really do like them that much. There's a crazy part of me that wants to give this an 8, but I don't think that I can. So I think I'm going to give it a 7.5. I'm going to give Twitch a 7.5. This album didn't even chart. Like it just died. Not even in Canada. I think it reached number 60 in Canada, and he's Canadian. So there was no tour to support it. There's only the one video that I know of, and he just disappeared from view.
What is gold in Canada?
In Canada, it's a 10th of U.S. sales.
So it's just 50,000.
Yeah, 50,000 based on population.
Because it did go gold in Canada.
Oh, it did. Oh, but it only, because I know it only hit number 60. So yeah, that's 50,000. If you think about, you know, I know it's hard to think about the States, but it is based on population. Yeah, so 100,000 is platinum, and when an album sells 1 million copies in Canada, that's diamond. But there aren't as many of us, right? If you look at the map of Canada, it looks like a big country, but it's kind of like this ribbon that stretches from coast to coast.
Only so many places you can live.
Yeah. Well, because if you go too far south, you're in the States, and if you go too far north, it's too cold.
It's too cold. Yep.
So yeah, no. I'm impressed it went gold. That's more than I knew. And what I really think is funny about it is that on his lightest album, it says produced and arranged by Aldo Nova for Growling Guitars Incorporated. And look, there's some great guitar playing on.
There's some great guitar playing on.
I wouldn't call it growl.
But some of those solos that he plays.
Yeah. And and unlike a lot of his previous albums, he does have a lot of guest players, guest singers. And yeah, Billy Carmassi, who's the brother of Denny Carmassi, was his drummer at this point, and that continued through Blood on the Bricks. So I don't know how he came across. That's the only place I've ever heard of Billy Carmassi. You hear a lot more about Denny, but yeah, he's got. I'm wrong. Yeah, Billy Carmassi did play in Lay Your Love on Me. I'm sorry, John. Yeah, you were right about that. Robbie Kilgore, that name sounds familiar for some reason. Michael Bolton's listed as background vocals, and you could definitely hear him in places. But yeah, it definitely sounds like a studio project more than an actual, album. But again, he's a good songwriter. He has a knack for a catchy song, and there's catchy songs on this.
Yeah, I think if they would have given it more production like subject or anything, it might have been a better. I mean, it's awfully dated, but if you can get through that, I think there are some good songs on here. Yeah,
it's hard when you try to get someone to listen to something and you almost have to instruct them to listen through the production rather than just put it on and enjoy it. But
it's like Cheap Trick the Doctor.
Exactly. Yeah. There's good songs in there, but the production
somewhere,
not too many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Standing on the Edge, which is better, but that's a whole other show. But
we're talking about the same time period though. Like a lot of artists fell into that, right? The drum machines, the drums that sounded like drum machines. Yeah.
Like we've talked about before, the only band that was able from this whole. Well, see, Aldo Nova's, he's an 80s guy. But, the 70s artists, Aerosmith's the only one that I know that absolutely did it gracefully. It's the only one I can throw out there. But, so what did you end up giving this, Tim? I'm sorry. Did you
I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Okay.
That's in the strength of the songs, and I'm docking it for its production.
See, I can't give it that high. It just seems like Mr. Nova's just going through the motions to me to some degree. But if you think about it, I don't know. They did put a lot of production in here. They got a lot of writers. It's just screams to me like, Aldo, we're just going to, you let us take over. And if you don't have a hit, well, you're out of here. But he didn't have a hit and he was out of here. But it just doesn't seem like an Aldo Nova album. It sounds like he's guesting on his own record.
Yeah, no, and he said that.
I'll leave it at that.
When he came back in '91, he said that in interviews. He said there were.
Did he? Okay.
That's why, and that's one of the reasons that there's a 6-year gap, because he had to. I think maybe John knows more about this. I think he basically had to wait out his contract.
He did. He just said that.
Was that part of it? Oh,
so he went back to Canada and said, "I'm done until they let me go."
He started writing for commercials and. Yeah,
did a lot of jingles and stuff.
Yeah.
From what you had read, maybe I don't know. I'm just going to ask because I don't know. Was he totally jaded by his experience that he went through with Portrait? Or John, what do you think of that? What's your?
Yeah, he was so burnt on having people telling him what to do, and because he's a control freak. Let's be honest, and I mean that in a good way. I don't mean that despairingly at all. He likes to be in control. He wants to make the decisions, and he couldn't do that. Which I think is a perfect example where I think he lost control of a lot of what he could do. And so, he just kind of said, look, that's it. I'm done. And decided to try other little things. And I guess that's when he probably started writing with other people for other artists, including Celine or somebody back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
He hated it. It was a horrible experience for him.
Yeah. Well, he produced some great stuff. I'll give him that. But Twitch is not one of them. I don't want to be real hard on it, but it is Aldo is guesting on his own record. So I guess I could give it a 6. That might be harsh. I will never revisit this record. I might revisit the instrumental Twitch. I like it a lot. There's some things I like, but it is really 80s sounding. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a bit too much 80s for me, and it just doesn't wear well anymore. The first 2 records, they're fine. They might be a bit dated, but they're not.
They're not.
I mean, this is commercial. Last hurrah, let's get a hit. So I guess I could give it a 6. I don't know. It seems low. John, what did you give? A 6 or 7?
6.5.
6.5. Okay, well, if you can do that, I don't feel
Because
so.
I was like torn between 6 and 7. I felt 6 was too harsh. 7 was generous for me, so I went with the 6.5.
All right, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Blood on the Tracks is the next record. He took 6 years in between. It's the 4th studio album. He was signed to John Bon Jovi's Jamco Records.
Yep.
It featured fewer outside writers this time because, like you said, Twitch had a lot of writers going at it. Yeah. Most of the songs were written by Aldo and Bon Jovi. So
yeah,
Jim Vallance is there, but during this period, Jim Vallance is everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
If anybody knows who that is, he primarily wrote with Bryan Adams, but he's on here, and what a great songwriter. So, you know, he's Canadian. Well, he's welcome. You know. Brett Adams, I wanted to read this from All Music, called the album generally overproduced and noisy, saying that most of the choruses are shout along affairs. And I want to mention one thing that I hate shout out choruses. I can't stand them. He ended his review by saying Blood on the Brick should have been better. Martin Popoff called the album Kickin' and characterized it as a comeback of sorts after a 6-year absence, stating Blood on the Bricks proves you're never really washed up for good unless you're 6 feet under, especially if you got John Bon Jovi as a buddy.
Yep. I'll agree with Martin on that. Yeah.
He didn't give it a high review. I do remember that. He didn't give any of his albums a high review.
I don't think Martin's a big fan.
Good. No.
But that's
no.
okay. We like,
yeah.
I'm a big fan. I'm just because Twitch, you know, it's okay. It's not a favor of anybody.
Well, everybody's got an album that's not the best.
Of course.
Yeah.
But this was nice to see. You know, I probably should. Now, there are some things that are really terrible about this, and it is the album cover. It's absolutely hideous. If I look at this, I thought this might be a death metal band or black metal, or all you need is a goat head and maybe a cauldron on here, and you've really got something. But
I love it. I love the album cover. To me,
you do.
To me, it looks like a huge side cover, but it's not. Yeah,
looks like
Bill X.
It looks like. It looks like Aldo's a metal guy.
Yeah,
I'm glad they look like Honeymoon Suite.
Well,
yeah, they look like every other band at that time.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, when I saw the video, I'm like, I like it, but who is it?
Who was it?
And I don't think most of the guys pictured are on the album.
Steve Seagal.
He did the slide guitar on it.
He's on here.
Yep.
Played on the April.
He's not in the picture.
But he didn't tour with them either.
Nope.
He just did some session work for him.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, when you see that logo, and what pops into your mind first? I don't know. It could have been better. But he was on. This got released on Mercury, so he did get a new record deal. But this is the only one. This must have either been a cutout or a promo because it's. Oh, yours is a cutout. This is
no. I bought it when it first came out, but it was a cutout within the year.
Well, but my copy's a cutout on CD.
Yeah, this has a hole here.
Yeah,
I
bought mine when it was first out.
I've got the vinyl, which I just got the vinyl last month.
I mean, look at that dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked totally different, right? If you look at his first album, the hair's longer. Yeah, he was willing to fit. Well, I say fit with the times. I'll have more to say about that when it's my turn. I've got plenty to say about this album, but
well, let's throw it over to Mr. Snow and see what he has to say about it.
Well,
What's your thoughts on this one? Well, compared to what came before, I mean, we've got a new Aldo Nova. He's 6-year rest. He's back. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, when I was working in a record store when this album came out, so I was extremely excited. I got the promo, and the record company guys came by the store and dropped off some tickets to their concert. So I got to go in early. I got to meet them. And Aldo Nova, let's see, right there. There's Phil X. There's Aldo. Kermasi is right here. Tim Harrington is over here. And Aaron Howe on keyboards is right here.
I don't have my glasses on, but is Phil X in this picture?
No.
Yes, he's
yeah.
Which
yeah.
one
That's
is-
Phil. That is Phil. Right. That's Phil right there.
Oh, I was on the wrong side. Okay, that's Phil. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He looks a lot different now, but that's Phil X.
I was
yeah.
going to say, holy
That
crap.
may have been the first time Phil X and John Bon Jovi met.
Probably was.
I bet you that's where it all came together, kids.
Yeah.
So this album kind
That's
of,
amazing.
I got to meet him on this album. So
Amazing.
I love this album. I even have a 12-inch single for Blood on the Bricks. So in
I've
the
never
little
seen that.
plastic, so it's got that. But Tim and I were talking about this. The record store local record store was doing a flip video. This stuff's going out on Saturday.
Mhm.
And I saw this. So I'm like, oh, dang, he's got the album. I didn't have it on vinyl. I mean, I do now. And I get there and it's this, but I still bought it.
Mhm.
And I share a story where I was at a record store in Portland, Maine, which is quite a long drive from where I live. And I saw that single. I thought it was the album. And when I realized it wasn't the album, like a moron, I left it there.
There can't be too many of those floating around.
No.
No, that was the first one I've ever seen. But anyway, the album, of course, thanks to his work with, wrong shoulder, with John Bon Jovi on Blaze of Glory, John returned the favor and did all this stuff for this album. And John Bon Jovi's influence is so on this album. I mean, it is basically a Bon Jovi album without Bon Jovi.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And
I was trying to listen past that, John, though. And I was thinking, does it sound like Bon Jovi? Is his influence?
It's got moments. I can see it and I can hear it. But it doesn't bother me because I'm a huge Bon Jovi fan. I have the box set right up there.
All right.
So yeah, it didn't bother me. Blood on the Bricks, when that song came out, it was nice to have something really, really hard and heavy. And I was really surprised how heavy this album really was. He got real political in the lyrics with Modern World. His dig on Donald Trump in that before Trump was even anything. I mean, Trump was just a rich billionaire going through wives and everything. Medicine Man, Bang Bang, Someday, Hey Ronnie. I mean, there's not a song on here I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
The guitar playing is phenomenal. I mean, the man can play the guitar. Completely underrated, as we discussed earlier. And if you're going to have a picture of a guitar on there, there better be some guitar. And
there's guitar.
He definitely brought it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a dated album in the fact that it's
not a pink guitar either.
It's not the pink guitar. It's not the Miami Vice guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, it's great. I really do like this album. It's one of the ones I do come back to quite a bit. Because it really excited me again, because we went 6 years without anything. And then coming off the high of meeting him, it just kind of ingrained into my psyche, I guess, at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good. But what's your opinion on shout along choruses, though, that drive me crazy? I'm just bother you or no? I mean, do you think that dates the record? I guess
it does. It does. But I grew up listening to nothing but shout choruses, it seems like, during that time. And as long as the chorus is catchy, there's a good riff, and it keeps my interest, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Me, it drives me crazy, but I can look past it because the
Yeah.
guitar. Well, anyway, I can look past it. So, John, what would you rate? What would you give this record? Sounds like you would rate this.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I give it a 10.
I don't think it's as good as the first two. No,
No,
but
but
for a return, he's been off for 6 years. Kids comes back, does a record with John Bon Jovi. What would you give it?
I'm kind of in the 8 to 9 range. I do.
Wow,
I
nice.
do like it a little more than the debut. Shoot me, but I do. And that's just because
What is happening here?
I just love this era of music
Okay.
more than the early 80s, even though I do love the early 80s. So it just fit with that. I mean, granted, I was in college at the time or just coming out of college, but still I just loved.
How do you feel about his vocals on this record? Because I think I already
the
said
higher
this.
pitch from the earlier ones.
I like the first two, the way he would sing, and he just seems like, I'm not trying to be critical, but say that again?
He's trying to be a little more aggressive, a little tougher, I think.
I know. I liked him when he's got a little bit more. This is a harder edge Aldo Nova, and I like a little bit more, dare I say it, pop oriented. There's a perfect blend, and you get a perfect blend on those first two records. And that's my fault for not being able to, you know what I mean, accept this as much. And I applaud you that you can, but I think those first two records are just absolutely, when I think Aldo Nova, I think those records, but it's just me. I'm not saying this is a bad record. If I look at this by itself, maybe I like it better. I'm not saying I dislike it, but maybe it's the production. I don't know. I think I could listen to this probably more than I would. Blood on the Brake.
I like the darker, edgier side.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah, but I do. I mean,
fair.
Don't get me wrong. I love that pop side too, but it was a nice change of pace. Again, he changed himself up. He's not rehashing like he did with Twitch.
I agree 100%. And you have to applaud him for that.
Part of it, that's where he's getting a point because he's keeping it different every single, almost every single.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I get it. Whether I dig it, that's my fault. But he's constantly evolving, and I can't fault an artist for that. So there you go. Yeah. So you would give this a 9 or a 10? What would you give it?
Go with a 9. I really do like it. Yeah.
All right.
I was listening to it again today at work, and I was so upset that I couldn't just put on some speakers and let it blast. I had to have my headphones on.
Excellent.
I really wanted to crank it.
Hey, a 9 that's a wonderful, because if anybody's watching this, that's what this is about. Pick it up. I mean, Jon Snow, this is a 9 out of 10. This is why we do this, to turn people on to stuff. So you can probably find this on Discogs. If you don't stream, you probably could find this pretty cheap, but at least check it out.
The vinyl, you're not going to find cheap.
Well, but I'm not going to buy the vinyl of it unless it was cheap, and I've never seen one.
Yeah.
Tim Durling, what's your thoughts on
Blood on the Bricks, which I don't have on vinyl? I've got to remedy that.
Yes.
I like this album cover, but anyway, that's not.
Well, everybody's. It just doesn't look like an Aldo Nova album to me.
I didn't think it looked black metal to me. I just thought it looked like a commercial hard rock album. But okay,
it looks like metal to me. I don't.
So full disclosure. Bon Jovi was my gateway band into all of this music. My gateway band to hard rock. I was 12 years old in 1986, and I guarantee you, if you were 12 years old in 1986, You Give Love a Bad Name was the heaviest thing that you ever heard on Top 40 radio, ever. And I, like so many other kids at that point, hook, line, and sinker. They were my gateway band. The first album, 7800, I love. Slippery, Jersey. I even like to Keep the Faith. After that, I find it gets very spotty, very fast, and I've not liked much of what they've done in the last 2 or 3 decades, which is tough because I've always got, they were a gateway band for me. They're so vital to my enjoyment of music. So I have absolutely no problem with shout-along choruses if it's connected to a good song.
Okay.
And there's a very heavy influence there's a very heavy Bon Jovi influence on this album. Also, it should be said that they go back all the way to when Aldo was working on his first album, because he worked on that first album at the power station. And John was just sweeping floors. He was a gopher, you know, doing this, doing that, secretly learning the tricks of the trade. So he and Aldo got to be buddies then. And then when Bon Jovi recorded their first album, Aldo Nova is credited on it for keyboards and some background vocals. But again, that was when he was sort of starting to enter his wilderness years. My understanding is that what kind of brought him back was Bon Jovi played Montreal in '89, and Aldo came out with them for an encore. And he kind of got that, you know, what it was like to be on stage again in front of a huge crowd. Then again, like John said, they worked on that album behind him there, the Blaze of Glory Young Guns 2 album.
Which one?
I got out last week when Jeff Beck died. And Randy Jackson plays on that too. So that's how, you know. So I think it was early 1990, I read in Circus Magazine, they were talking to John Bon Jovi, and he said, I got a big surprise. I can't tell you who I'm working with right now, but it's going to be a surprise when it happens. And eventually it comes out that he was working with Aldo Nova on a comeback album. So that's how I knew about this. But like I said, I saw the video for Blood and the Bricks. I didn't know who it was because I kind of came into it halfway through, and I'm like, okay, I like this song. I don't know who this is. I'm trying to figure out who it is. Label comes on at the end. That's when I buy that first album. The very next thing I bought was this. So yeah, he's on, you know, he's on Bon Jovi's label, Mercury. So John thought he would get into so this is when Bon Jovi, the band, were sort of on hiatus. And I actually found this out years later. They were very close to breaking up. So John did that solo album, the Blaze of Glory thing. Richie Sambora did his solo album, which is totally underrated. Great album.
Phenomenal album. Yeah.
Yeah. So while all that was going on, John and Aldo were writing songs. I think the only songs that aren't just John Aldo co-writes on here are I'm gonna have to look. I know Aldo wrote Bright Lights, the last song by himself.
Someday.
That's a solo co-write. Young Love. No, okay. Someday. Someday was co-written. Aldo Nova, John Bon Jovi, Rick Hughes. Rick Hughes was the singer for a Canadian metal band called Sword. Not The Sword, but Sword. And then he went into like a slightly more commercial band called Saints and Sinners, and I think he only did one album. I think Sword's back together. They were heavier. Anyway, but Young Love was Aldo Nova, John Bon Jovi, Jim Vallance. And I think that there are so many songs in this album that were potential hits that should have been all over the radio.
Yeah.
I understand they came up with Blood on the Bricks first. They wanted to, you know, they didn't want to open with a ballad after this long. They wanted to come up with something that kind of kicked. I think that song did okay on the mainstream rock chart in the States, but it didn't do much of anything else. I don't think it was promoted that well, but Someday was a huge power ballad, should have been a huge hit. Young Love could have been a hit. This Ain't Love, Hey Ronnie was another ballad. Touch of Madness is a sort of a great poppy rock song. Here's the problem. Aldo had to sit out his contract with CBS. He didn't want to record for them anymore. This album is probably 2-3 years too late. If this album had come out in 1989 or even 1990, it probably would have been a successful album. It would have at least gone gold, maybe had one top 40 single. He put this out in the summer of 1981. The tide was turning. We were about to enter what I call the dark times, because I am emphatically not a grunge fan.
Right.
Anyone that watched me on the Contrarians on my Spotlight episode knows that. And I know people are like, yeah, well, you like that pop metal crap. Yeah, I do. I like that pop metal crap. Okay, I do. That was the music
Hey,
that
we all like what we like.
Yeah. So I can understand if someone was not a Bon Jovi fan, this album might be a tough sell because his fingerprints are all over this. There's only one, I have only one real criticism with this album though. And it's not the drummer, it's the drum sound. Kenny Aronoff is a fantastic drummer.
Yeah.
I don't like the way the drums sound on most of this album. There are a couple of songs that I wish that drum sound was used for the entire album, and those would be Young Love and Bright Lights. I just don't think they have the punch that they should. They would make this album sound heavier than it is. But like when Blood on the Bricks comes on, it gets, I love the song. It's anthemic. I love it. But the drum, when they come on, they just don't, I don't know if they're too high pitched, like if they're too trebly. I'm probably not using the proper technical terms, but
tune too high is probably what you mean.
Maybe, yeah. At this point, my ears are attuned, especially listening to Bon Jovi, to that Bruce Fairbairn, Bob Rock production. Big, like you hit a snare, and it just cracks. And like I said, Kenny Aronoff's a great drummer, but I don't know if John knows what I'm talking about. I just wish the drums had some more low end on them.
I'm going to have to listen to it again.
I think they got it perfectly right on Young Love, and especially on Bright Lights. That's such a killer song. It's a long song. Aldo even does a cool organ solo in it.
It's a great
this
closer.
album was in the delete bins within the year. It came out too late. It had no promotion, and it was a dead issue. And then he went into the wilderness again because he's just coming out into the world again. And he's like, well, people don't want to hear from me, I guess. So like I know that summer, and I think he toured with I think the bill was Aldo Nova, Great White, and Scorpions. And again, in another year, that bill is not going to sell anything. So I think this album was 2-3 years too late to become a hit. I still really like the album. I always have. If you're going to buy this on CD, make sure you get an original Mercury copy, because if you get a copy that Lemon Recordings put out, which is a reissue label from the UK, it's going to have in big bold letters featuring John Bon Jovi on the cover.
I've seen those.
I'm looking at it right now.
So anyway, it's a good album no matter what form you get it in.
I'm surprised. You know what, Tim? I'm surprised Lemon even put it out.
Well, see, they issued a lot of albums that were owned by Universal labels. Because my copy of the first 38 Special album is Lemon, which is fine because that's a rare CD. Anyway,
that is hideous what they did to the album cover.
It's like all of the Max Webster reissues.
I hate
where they
those.
all say featuring Kim Mitchell. It's the same thing. It's like, come on, man. If somebody's going to order an Aldo Nova CD, they must know something about him. They don't need to be told that John Bon Jovi's on this. And if they only knew the latter-day Bon Jovi, that may keep them from buying it. But anyway, as for my rating on this album, I'm going to give it. Give it a 9.
Holy mackerel! I feel bad about
I think it's the first time John and I have matched, but I stand by this album. My criticism about the way the drums sound is minor because I love the songs on it. To me, this filled a gap where there was no Bon Jovi album in 3 years at that point. This kind of filled the gap, but again, it also made me like, oh, this is cool. I get to go back and buy all of Aldo Nova's old albums, find out there's only 3 of them. So,
I didn't get to do that. I already had the other 3 when it came out.
And I bet you within a month of Blood on the Bricks hitting the stores, Sony puts this out. A portrait.
I've got
of
that
Aldo
too.
Nova. Which is really, really heavy on the first album. Matter of fact, 8 out of the 10 songs on that first album are here. Then you've got 7 or 8 from Subject and only 3 from Little Old Twitch. Former labels always do that. If they even think that an artist is going to be successful on another label. After that, there's not a lot. Do we want to go through real quick and basically bring everybody up to speed on what he's done? Because there's not a lot.
Go ahead, because I don't think I can speak on it as much as probably you two can. So whoever wants to talk about it, we're good. Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
Well, I'll just talk about the next one. I want to say, was it 97, Tim?
My CD says 96. I've seen 95. I don't know for sure. This one just kind of appeared. in a record store. Somebody told me about it, and I said, Aldo Nova has a new album, and they said, well, sort of. I looked at it, it was kind of weird, and I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't know how to explain it. I happened to find it used, and it's this.
No, he has
It's
a copy.
called
I don't actually have it anymore.
See, if I
Nova's
know about
Dream.
it, I know it exists, but had I would have seen that like in a used bin, I would not have really even.
Well, that's just,
I would have
even
looked
notice
right
that.
over it.
yeah. There's a bit of what Martin Popoff calls cognitive dissonance, because it doesn't say Aldo Nova plainly.
Right.
It's
That's
Nova's
really
Dream featuring Aldo Nova in the small print. Now, if you actually have a chance to look at the CD, you can see it's him.
It is him.
And you talk about experimental. I think, John, you can back me up on this one. This is probably the album he always wanted to make.
Yeah, I mean, it is out there.
Yeah.
It is different. I'm trying to find nice words, because it is unusual.
Got moments. It's got moments on it. There's spoken word on it. There's a lot of instrumentals. There aren't many what I would call actual songs. It's kind of a quasi concept album.
Yeah, I think it's a concept album about dreaming, because it's touching everything. One of the best songs on there is "Excuse Me While I Scream."
Excuse me while I scream. Yeah,
just a phenomenal song. Jimi Hendrix influence song. And then you were saying the other day, Carlito's Way is
Santana.
Yeah. So there's some great guitar work on here, but there's a lot of synth, a lot of experimental sounds. There's a lot of prayers, bedtime prayers when the child sings his bedtime.
Yeah.
She sings her bedtime prayers.
Then there's Lighting Up and Mary Jane.
Yes. It's just one of those things that's all over the place. And yeah, you're probably right. This is the album he wanted to make. No one, and sometimes that can be dangerous when there's no one around to tell you anything.
Yeah.
But
it definitely wasn't made with singles in mind, although there is a video for, it's an instrumental track called Dream Walk. There is a video for that, which that song he has said is, because he says in the liner notes who he's the guitar players he's trying to emulate. Dream Walk is his sort of tribute to David Gilmour. So it came out independently on what does this say? Canadian Heritage. So long story short, it is possible to get government grants up here to, I don't know how you access that, but so it's actually got a Canadian Heritage, like an official government logo on here, but it's distributed by RCA BMG. So, it's not an RCA release. They just distributed it. So that's probably the only reason the copy ended up in my hands. But it's very rare. I think he is reissuing it, or he's talking about reissuing it.
Yeah, he's talking about reissuing it. It's supposed to go up for sale in the next month or so.
Yeah, I'm hoping he puts it out on vinyl.
Yeah, all I know is that copy you have is so hard and so expensive.
Yeah, and not really one of those ones that you get it like, boy, am I glad I spent $50 on this.
Right, and I think that's what's holding me back. I used to have it. I bought it back in the late '90s when I think I discovered it 2 years after it came out.
Yeah,
and I had a copy, but during the move, when we moved from Georgia to North Carolina, it's gone. But that's the last time we hear from him, though.
For a long time.
For 21 years.
Yeah. Sony put this out in 2006.
Well, except for those, yeah.
Yeah, it's called The Hits, and there's nothing different on it. The only difference is this is a better balance than that Portrait of Aldo Nova, because of the 3 albums, it's got a solid 5 tracks from each. And I think I was still in Columbia House, and this was a CD I got to get out of to fill out my agreement. I didn't need it. But yeah, the next time I heard from him was 2018 when he put this out. Aldo Nova 2.0, which is a 7-song EP. 6 songs are redos. None of the redos improve on anything. And then there's one new track in here called I'm a Survivor, which I thought was okay. I bought it because I'm a fan, but then I'm like, well, now what?
There's a Nova's Dream on here for $19.99 in the States.
Really?
$4 shipping. Yeah.
Do
Okay,
it.
that's cheap.
Do it? No, I'm
Yeah.
Do
asked
it.
for sure. Yeah, should I do it?
Yeah, I might have
Oh
to
yeah,
go
it's
and
worth, it's worth hearing. I mean, it's Aldo Nova. It's worth hearing. Excuse Me While I Scream's fantastic. Just don't expect a regular album.
But it's worth not $20, right?
That's actually less than I would have thought.
Okay. Well,
I've seen them for $100, and
Yeah.
I haven't really seen one less than $75.
Yeah.
1999. I might be clipping on something really quick.
done. I'll have to
Oh,
report
you got
back. Yeah. Well, seems like a bargain. But there are
That's
some
not-
on there that are expensive. I'll
Yeah,
give you
that's
that.
not bad.
It's different. So
Yeah.
All right,
it's
done.
So the only other and then starting in what 20, well, I guess it was all in 2022. Was it John or 2021? All of a sudden, there's new
it was
music.
2022. It's like
Yeah.
wham, just tons of stuff.
Yeah. So this,
We'll go with that.
Yeah, I don't
one,
have that yet.
yeah, this is Aldo Nova Reloaded again 2.0. So it's got all of those songs. I think. I don't know if there was any.
It doesn't. It's there. It's a different set of songs.
Yeah,
It's
that's
didn't he
right. I always
re-record
get
a
that mixed
lot
up.
of these older tracks?
Oh, they're all totally
That's all.
re-recorded.
Yeah, I'm not a big.
Oh.
I mean,
And
Now
this thing's-
I understand in his case why he would do that, so that he could use those recordings and not have to license them from Sony.
Yeah.
But the problem is, okay, voices age. There's that select few vocalists who can still sing the way they sang in their 20s. It's a very short list. I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the production.
Yeah.
I complained about the drum sound on Blood on the Bricks. This is even worse.
Yeah.
Like I don't, and Monkey on Your Back, John, that re-recording. It's terrible.
I will never listen to this again. So
No,
okay. Well, I'm not even going to go there.
no.
Thank you.
If you're going to get anything, like I'm a Survivor is a pretty good song. See if you can get this, the EP.
Yeah.
Just to get that song.
that's
Okay.
hard to get to.
Yeah.
But what's weird
But
about this
the
one?
only other thing about this is actually 3 discs, and
It's 3
they all
discs.
have the same songs on them, which is odd in and of itself. but the reason they all have the same songs on them is because disc 2 has no lead vocal. So if you want to karaoke with Aldo, give it a shot. Disc 3, no lead guitar. So if
You
you're
want
a
to
guitar
jam
player,
with Aldo?
yeah,
you're ready.
jam with Aldo. So I like the idea. You're not gonna replace, those originals. I do like the fact that he did Blood on the Bricks and Modern World. I like the fact that he acknowledged that album. I would have liked to have heard something from Twitch, because if he had an actual band backing him, who knows if he did Redone Tonight.
I think that's what it needs.
Their Love on Me.
Yeah.
But so he might do more. I don't know.
Yeah, there are
but-
no Aldo 2.0s on Discogs. None. There are none.
Yeah, that one's a hard one to find.
No, there is, and I know that because I added some of them, because that's how few copies there are. You hang on a second. I'll
Well,
find
there are
it.
none
I'll
for
send-
sale. There aren't any for sale.
Oh, I
Yeah,
believe
there's none
that,
for
yeah.
sale.
Yeah. So that leads us to the next thing, which John and I have, but in different forms.
Yes.
And John sat in with me on an episode and we reviewed this. So what we're both holding up here, Grant, is the same album. This is The Life and Times of Eddie Gage, a rock opera by Aldo Nova, 10-song EP, a little preview. Now, so John's got, I believe, an early bird version. He got it
this is a limited edition.
Okay.
Yeah.
They only sent it out to the first 300, 500 people that ordered it. So apparently I must have been within that range. But I want one that's got Tim's cover. So I'll probably end up ordering.
Yeah,
it.
I'm looking at Tim's cover on Discogs. Oh, I see your cover now.
Yeah, they're both on there. The 2 EPs I just added because nobody had added those. But lost my train of thought.
Yeah, they've
So
gone
what's
Pop
going on with
Market.
this?
Pop Market has them for sale new still. So just saying.
I was waiting on this on Amazon.ca
Mhm.
for months, and
Yes.
the release date kept getting pushed back. And I would talk to John; he's got it.
I got
Yeah,
mine in April.
So finally, I said, "The heck with this!" I went on eBay, and I bought a a brand new one on eBay. And I got to say, and we reviewed this, I really like this.
Yes, I listened to it again today.
Yeah,
Love
I
it.
think there's some really, really good stuff. I want to hear the rest of the rock opera.
25 songs is the full opera.
Yeah.
So I really want to hear that.
Well, now I want to hear it.
So the only, oh man, if nothing else, this is worth it for the first track, Hey Lottie Dottie. That's a rocker. Like, and he sounds great on it. His guitar playing is still good. I think there's a lot of great songs on here.
Free Your Mind, King of Deceit's one of my favorites. And then the Bitch in Black. And there's an instrumental that I really love called On the Way to the Psycho Ward. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
that
Aldo's
me
back.
Off the subject.
With this one, Aldo's back. There is a little, his voice has changed for sure. Because there's one song on here I didn't like the vocals, but all the other songs he's adjusted the style of the song to fit his voice now. So,
okay.
Because he's definitely a lot older.
Yeah, sure.
And what's odd about this is that it's a 2-disc set and it doesn't need to be. There's 9 songs on disc 1 and there's only 1 song on disc 2, and it's a little piano instrumental called Les Anges, or The Angels.
1 song.
Yeah.
And I told Tim, I think it's because now anyone he sells, he gets to count as 2.
He counts as 2 sales. And I'm like, you know what? That just might be right. But yeah, it's really good. It's semi-autobiographical, the story behind it, but you don't need to follow the story. It's just got good songs on it. Like, it's really, really good. Like, this is not Nova's dream, even though this sounds like exactly what he wants to do now. Mm-hmm. This is an Aldo Nova album. If nothing else, seek this out, Grant.
Okay.
This is good. This is good
I'm
stuff.
sold. You've sold
and
me.
The only other thing are these 2 EPs that John and I did an episode about, which may or may not have aired by the time this aired. This one's called Short Stories, which I said to John, it looks like a package of guitar strings, but it's not.
It does. Oh my God, you're right.
And then there's this one called Sonic Hallucinations. Now this one is much more experimental. This has 3 actual songs. The first track, The Border, is awesome.
Fantastic.
It's very Santana influenced, but you can tell it's Aldo. It's my favorite of the 6 songs in total on these EPs.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And all of that latter day stuff, I think the best way to get it is to go to aldonova.com and go to the store. Don't just go to music, because I don't think it's all, because John was confused by that. He couldn't find it. So I said, no, here's the link, and it's under store. For some reason, you would think they would be,
under music. Yeah.
I
didn't even see the store.
I think it would be either or, right? But some websites aren't very intuitive.
Okay, well, I'll head over there to his site. I'd rather buy from Aldo than,
Yeah. And it didn't take that long for the EPs to get to my house, and I'm up here in Canada.
Yeah.
So
it didn't take long. They were only $6, I think, each. They weren't bad.
Yeah, not bad. I probably.
Well, do they ship from the States? Is that where they're being distributed from?
Which I think so.
I think they came from New York, but
which doesn't make any sense because he's Canadian.
He's not going to get one of those little signs on his CD from the Canadian government, for crying out loud.
They don't. You know what? I don't see that much anymore. I don't know. I mean, I know it's still very much a law, but I don't think that they. I don't know. It's they don't put it on the releases themselves anymore. I'm not sure. Maybe the metadata is all in the digital tracks.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
all right, cool.
But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Until he puts out that full rock opera, that's pretty much all the Aldo Nova there is to talk about, I think.
And I think the rock opera is getting close. His website talks about they're going to release a single in February, The Bitch in Black, from the opera. So I'm hoping that means we're going to see it soon.
Yeah. And then we can do another show.
Yeah.
There you go. That would be fun.
So,
but I think that pretty much sums it up. Aldo Nova's back, kids. So check for all his new material. Like I said, he's back, and I'm losing money because I keep spending it. So I want to thank you both for that. So, but that's what always happens on these shows. But
it's true.
Right.
I bet you, Grant. I bet you we can pinpoint the moment on each one of these where Grant pulls the trigger on something.
It's not the first show that I've done it.
No,
it's a sickness. It's
Yeah, I've
bad.
done it on LeBrain show once. They were talking about something, and I opened up eBay or Discogs and went click and bought it.
Yeah.
While we
Yep.
were doing
John
the show.
Clauser in our April wine series.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's been on
John's
there
got
buying
it.
them when we're talking about April wine stuff. All right, I just got it.
Yeah, 5 minutes after we've talked about the album, okay, that's on the way. What
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, it's so funny.
But
Well, anyway,
it's
I guess
great,
we
though,
could. I
exposing
guess
people
we.
to this stuff.
So I guess we can wrap this one up. Oh, I never even gave my review. Well, I'm going to give it a 7. The blood
On the
blood
bricks.
on the bricks. I guess I'll give it a 7. The shout vocals kind of drive me crazy, but it's nice to have Aldo Nova back and the guitar on this.
Yeah.
Kids, if you like great guitar playing, it's all right here. And you can pick this CD up cheap if you want it. So
For a while,
I gave it a 7. They gave it a 9. Hey, it's good enough for me.
for a good 2-year period, I saw that everywhere.
I haven't seen it. I used to see it in the cutout bins a lot.
Yeah.
Not in years. I had to order that off Discogs to get it. But I haven't seen it in years. I don't see any of his stuff anymore. The only
If
thing
anything, I see the first album on vinyl once in a while.
I see, if I ever see anything, it's that best of collection that you showed. I'll
Yeah.
see that once in a blue moon, but for the most part, it would be the first album on CD. And very
I always
rarely
see
do
Blood
I
on the
see that
Bricks.
now.
I see Blood on the Bricks in the debut.
Okay.
Yeah.
I rarely ever see Twitch or Subject.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Twitch in the wild for years.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the CD out, but it didn't sell. No one's got one. There aren't any out there.
When I bought the Twitch album on CD, it was 92, and I
Mhm.
was really surprised to find it. I mean, I think that the store I found it in, it had been there for a while because it was still in its long box.
Mhm.
Wow,
The long box was probably all beat up.
Yeah.
No,
Still
it was
there.
brand new. It was brand new. Nobody touched it. Nobody wanted it. I took it home.
Very good. Good.
Yeah, I wish I had all my long boxes. I had Twitch and Blood on the Bricks with those CD long boxes. I wish I'd kept them.
Wow. We used to have a local store that had a long box section of used. They were still
Yeah.
all in the long box and sealed. And I kind of regret not just grabbing a bunch of stuff that was in there.
Yeah, no
I
shit.
bet you I bet you I had 24 long boxes at one point, and I could have just put them up on my wall. I don't know where they went. That's something like, it's like Grant talked about those Target CDs. You didn't realize they might have been worth anything.
Well, they weren't worth anything until I started talking about it.
Yeah.
And I only started talking about it because of nostalgia back in 2002. And then all of a sudden, on the Steve Hoffman side, it just took off and everybody started collecting them. And then the market went crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. You never know what's going to take off,
Well, it's like I did an episode on the Canadian CBS CDs that had that weird back cover with the boxes on them. And I have seen Twitch that looks like that. It's not what mine looks like, it's US, but I have seen the Twitch CD that looks like that. Very strange. But
I don't know. It is what it is.
Mine didn't take off like yours did, but who knows? Maybe it will someday.
Yeah, but this is like in 2002. So I don't know. Everybody just started to talk about it on Steve Hoffman forums and it just took off. Everybody started collecting them.
Now,
and it was fun.
Queen News of the World on
I had one.
TV is going to pay $500-$600.
I had one that I bought at Used Kids back in the day for $5, and it was a misprint. The way they silk screen them in layers. Well,
yeah, it's off. Yeah, there's something. It's either off.
Wow.
That's one of the really rare.
I had it and I sold it to one of the other because I don't know. You know how you go through your life and there's times when you purge stuff or you need some money for something. Well, I sold a lot of them and I sold them on Steve Hoffman's and someone's got that one. I wish I had never sold it. I had all the Queen Target CDs. I had a huge collection that I ended up selling most of them. But now I just go out. If I see one, I'll buy it. When I was in Reno, I bought the original pressing, the Target CD of Centerfield. John Fogerty.
Yeah,
it's got Zance Can't Dance. It's got the original one on it, and it's a Target. Yeah. But I paid $5 for it, and I said, I wonder if that's one of those because I hadn't seen one in years. Now, oh my God, it's a Zance Can't Dance.
Well, that's the key to these Target CDs. If anybody's looking for them, we've gone way off track, but
I know. Well, we're winding it up.
Open the case up and look at it, because
Mhm.
just because it looks like the same case, it might have a Target CD in it.
You could.
And by the way, kids, we're not talking about the store Target.
Right.
Well, go watch Grant's episode. We'll type in
Yeah, I did a
Grant's Rock
Target
Warehouse
episode.
Target CDs, and he'll tell you all what they are. They've got this really cool design on them.
Mhm.
I don't own any. I wish I did.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure they made, well, I don't know if they made it up. Well, they might have made up there to Canada. I don't know.
Well, there were none made for sale in Canada. But
No.
the other thing is that, I mean, I grew up and I still live pretty close to the border. So, it's possible I could find one in a used store.
You just have to look. I already
Yeah.
know which ones to look for. I every time I go out, I look.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm addicted, it's bad.
Watch that episode.
Watch that episode. I'll educate you.
Yeah, it's all Warner Electra Atlantic
Mhm.
artists that made these Target CDs. They were manufactured in West Germany for sale.
Mhm.
Some of them were made in
Japan, West
Japan,
Germany,
so-
and Japan.
Yeah, they're called Target because they kind of look like a gun sight.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder
Someone
if I
said
have
it should have been called a scope. I said, well, I don't know why I called it a Target back in the day and it took off.
It caught on. There's a website called targetcd.com that
I know.
that somebody can go on if they want to see all of the ones that came out. I mean, there's Led Zeppelin ones, there's
Mhm.
Queen ones, there's Fleetwood Mac, Foreigner,
Yeah, that's the guy I bought my Queen one.
Yeah.
My News of the World. Try to find one of those cheap. You can't.
Well, see, those CDs, ones like that are ones where sometimes you get reissues and they would say first time on CD, and it's not true.
Not true.
But anyway,
Oh well. All right, cool.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, we went off on a tangent like we always do on this show, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's all about the music, kids. So anyway, check out these Aldo Nova CDs, records, whatever you can get. Hopefully you'll get turned on to something if you haven't checked it out yet. I want to thank Jon Snow. First time coming on the channel. Mr. Snow,
Thank
it's
you
nice
very
to
much.
have you.
Thanks for
Hopefully
having me.
we can collaborate again on something. I don't know. I'm
That'd be
always
great.
looking for new blood, But anyway, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And Tim Durling, of course, everyone knows Tim. Thank you for coming on again and discussing Aldo Nova. So anyway, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you like Aldo Nova, please leave a comment down there and hit the bell. You know all what to do. And I want to thank you guys for coming on, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.